Hey everybody, it's Allison, stlprostretch.com, and today's video is going to be about problem solving, specifically because I've had some people ask me about it, and I have talked about the T quadrant and the X quadrant, and you're like, that's great, that's really cool, but what do I do with that? What does that mean? Well, I think a lot of the times it's just good to do the stretches, do all of the lower body stretches, and they tend to balance each other, but sometimes you get into a problem area. So you have troubles with a muscle that's bothering you when you're working out, or it's just bothering you all the time. So how do I fix that? And that's one of the great things about resistance stretching is that we have a way to move forward and progress so that we can break through some of these trouble areas. I have made some visual aids. So it's going to be a little difficult because I'm going to have to get close to the camera, and I couldn't flip the camera, so I'm not seeing anything of what I'm recording right now. But I'm going to walk up to the camera and get closer because otherwise all the words and everything would be backwards. So I'm going to walk up, and let's see if I can get this on here. You may want to take a screenshot of this. So we've got a cross section of the right leg, right? Going forward is the hip flexor. So we know the hip flexor stretch, I hope, from the other videos. And then directly on the other side, if you go straight down, we have the central hamstring. So that would be agonist, antagonist, right? So say we have a problem with our hip flexor, right? And we stretch it, and it's not really opening up too much. Well, we would go and we would stretch the central hamstring. And then after you stretch the central hamstring, you might want to try this again. And a lot of the time, that works. We have two muscles that tend to balance each other out, and one of them is too tight or too weak or is jammed up, and we need to stretch it, and we stretch the other one and go back. And a lot of times that works. So say maybe your central hamstring is just jammed up on you. It's not going to fold while you're trying to stretch your hip flexor, so it jams up, right? Well, if we stretch it, and then we go back to the hip flexor. And this type of stretching, the resistance stretching, is different than other stretching in that it causes, we're applying the stretch, the muscles getting longer against a force, which causes tissue adaptation. This is very different from other stretching. Now, if this doesn't work, we are going to go to the conflicting muscle. You see all this yellow here? All these groups of muscle take the body in a forward motion. And the other muscles on the other side would take the body into more of like a fetal position, like protect myself, going in toward the body. Okay, so we have the hip flexor, central hamstring. You can see that one's in the yellow and one's not. The hip flexor takes you into fetal position. The central hamstring goes the opposite direction, right? So now we're going to go to the conflicting muscle, which is going to be on 90-degree away on the opposite side of this hip flexor. So we've got the abductors. So we would do the abductor stretch, and that would be the glute stretches, the figure 4 stretches. There are we've got the TFL stretches, a number of those. And then we go back and check and see the hip flexor again. If the hip flexor isn't opening up, maybe we need to stretch the conflicting muscle and then the completing muscle, which would be the balancing muscle to the conflicting muscle. So that's how the problem solving works. I'm going to come back over here and talk to you from here. So say I've got a problem with my abductors. This hip is just bothering me all the time. It's jamming up when I'm trying to do my groin stretch. It's jamming up when I'm trying to do my hip flexor stretches. It's jamming up when I'm trying to do my abductors or my inner thigh stretches, right? So I'm going to go stretch it first. So let's do that. I'm going to lie down, and we'll do the basic hip flexor stretch, right? Or abductor stretch. Sorry. Cross the ankle over, lift, and put your hand through the hole. I'm going to press this ankle into the thigh, right? Pressing into the thigh, the whole time. I'm holding this leg steady with my arms, pushing out. That's the strength. You can just come back and do that a number of times. If it's really tight, it might appreciate that. And we'll do about 4 of those. And then we'll come into the stretch. So we're going to push out, keep pushing out, and I'm going to pull back with my arms. I'm still pushing out with my right ankle. And now I'm just going to take it forward and back using the strength and stretch. And it feels really nice. And next, I'm going to do the adductor stretch. So I don't have my socks handy today right in front of me, so I'm going to be doing the one laying on my back. So I'm going to, lying on my back, I'm going to just take it down. My legs are up. They're opening. I'm going to press open with my hands. And as I'm pressing out with my hands, the heels will come together. Keep pressing the heels together and let the arms win to open up this way. So if you're here and you're still feeling that, abductor, the back of the hip jamming up, you might want to stretch it again. Stretch it again. And then come back and see if this works. Now, if that doesn't work, then we have to go to the conflicting muscle. Remember, that's the muscle that's on the other side. So in this case, we have abductor, which takes the leg away from the midline of the body. We have the balancing muscles, or the antagonist, pulling the leg in toward the body. And now we've got to go 90 degrees away from that, but we don't want to go the same muscle, the same direction that this is taking away. So we're going to do the hip flexor. So if you took a look at that, if you screenshotted that chart, it will show you that I'm going to go to the hip flexor next. So for the hip flexor, as you know, I'm kneeling. I'm going to pull my right knee in toward my chest. Imagine my legs scissoring together. Pull my belly in. So I have this catch going. That's the resistance. We hold it the whole time. And we're going to pull out of it. So strength would be this way. And stretch would be this way for my right leg, right? It's kind of weird not being able to see myself. I have no idea what's being videotaped. My head could be cut off. I have no idea. Now this is where it gets a little complicated, because some of these muscle groups that we're stretching, say the central hamstring also includes the glutes. Well, that muscle's included with it because it's a hip extensor. So the central hamstring, so we have hip flexor. I'm going to step back a bit. Hip flexor goes out and actually externally rotates as it does. Central hamstring goes back, goes in. Right? So we could either do the central hamstring, and that would be the completing muscle to complete the whole T quadrant. I have my blocks here. We could do it this way, where I'm kneeling. I have my right foot forward. I'm going to pull the heel toward me. That's my strength. And then to pull back is my stretch. So I'm just going to do it all at once. Pull the heel in toward me. Keep pulling it in and pull it back. But of course, as you know, we can do the hamstring a number of different ways. And I do think that the central hamstring is one of the hardest muscles to build strength in by yourself. I always look at those Pilates reformer machines, and I'm kind of jealous because I don't have one, and that would be ideal if you wanted to stretch and strengthen your hamstring. Of course, the best way is to get someone to stretch you. which is pretty easy to do actually. And then you could also do the one where you're lying down. Hand behind the calf. I'm going to push my heel. So this gets the hamstring is the action is, the muscle recruitment is a little bit different than the knee bending one because this is coming from the hip joint, right? So they are very different stretches. Heel presses down toward the other. I'm going to put my hands behind my calf, slow the movement down. My upper body is the counterbalance, and then I'm going to let my upper body just slowly bring it down. I'm always kicking this way, always. Now, what if we go through all these and I'm still feeling tightness in my hip? You might be working on the wrong quadrant. So, I know it's kind of crazy, but let's take a look at, I'm going to come back up to the screen. I know this is really like, I'm really going old school here with these, and it might be a little confusing. I'm sure I'll get questions. I had to put my glasses on for this one. So we're going to take a look at this T quadrant, and I've drawn a red line around the. It's pretty easy to see which is the agonist antagonist because it's directly across from each other, right? But sometimes it gets confusing when you have this conflicting muscle and you don't know which direction to go. So maybe you might just want to memorize, which one's the conflicting muscle. So I'm going to take this up to the camera again, and we will show you. So here we have the hip flexor up top, central hamstring at the bottom, abductors, adductors. Oh wait. So we started with the abductors. We went to the adductors, right? But that didn't work. So now we got to do the conflicting muscle, which is the hip flexor. So I've just drawn a line. So these two conflict, and this is for the T quadrant. Now, if none of this works, you might be working on the wrong quadrant, in which case, here is the X quadrant. So we've got the groin stretch. That balances with the lateral hamstring. So if you're having problems with your lateral hamstring, you might want to work on stretching your groin. And you can see the yellow line. So these go out, take the leg away from the body. These go in, take the leg in toward the midline of the body. And then we have, so say we have trouble with our lateral hamstring, we stretch the groin, we go back, it's still giving us troubles. Well, the medial hamstring is the muscle that we're going to go to next. It's the conflicting muscle. A lot of times the medial hamstring isn't doing its job, or it's too tight and we need to stretch it to get everything balanced out so that these two muscles are not conflicting with each other all the time. And then to balance it out, we would do the lateral quad. So I hope that makes some sense to you. I know sometimes we get to a point where, and I know one of you is been having problems with piriformis and problems with some other things too. We see, okay, piriformis, we've got that, adductors, we've stretched those out, the out and in, and then we have hip flexor and central hamstring, and you're just still feeling like this is maybe, it's better, but you're feeling something in here that's like super tight. Well, the hip flexor and the groin are like so close to each other. They can help each other out. So you might be working on the wrong quadrant, or you might just need to be doing all of the stretches and see where that gets you in, 3 weeks or so. Sometimes sometimes it can take some time. There's no instant relief, but over the course of a week or 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes months, things start to untwist and rebalance. And you'll feel it in your workouts. Like sometimes when I go out I have really tight quads. If I go out for a run, I always call it a good day when the next day I wake up and my groin is sore, because those two, as you can see on this thing, on this little chart, those two are conflicting. So they battle it out. So that is the best way that I could try to figure out how to just clue you in on a little problem solving. Any questions? I'm sure you have questions. Let me know. And then hopefully maybe in a couple days I'll come up with just a simple, full body stretch for you. Okay? Have a great one. Bye.